Dr. Kate Miller rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the strange signal patterns dancing across her computer screen. The Titan Deep Space Array had been her home for 3 years now, and she had seen every type of space noise imaginable. But this was different. This had structure. "Alex, come look at this," she called to her colleague working at the next station. Dr. Alex Carter rolled his chair over, coffee cup in hand. "What have you got?" he asked, peering at the display. "I picked this up about 2 hours ago. It's not natural background radiation. There's a pattern here, almost like..." Kate paused, afraid to say what she was thinking. "Like language," Alex finished for her. He set down his coffee and leaned closer. "Where's it coming from?" Kate pointed to the star map on her secondary screen. "Sector 7 Alpha near the galactic core, but that's not the weird part. Look at the transmission frequency." Alex's eyes widened. "That's a Tier 5 frequency. Only the most advanced civilizations are supposed to use those bands." Kate nodded grimly. Humanity had only achieved basic faster-than-light communication 5 years ago. They were barely considered Tier 2 by galactic standards. Whatever was sending this message was far beyond their level. "Should we report this to Commander Morrison?" Alex asked. Before Kate could answer, the laboratory door slid open. Commander Jake Morrison stepped inside, his military bearing evident even in casual clothes. Behind him walked Lisa Grant, their AI systems specialist, carrying a tablet and looking excited. "Dr. Miller, I understand you found something interesting," Morrison said without preamble. Kate was used to the commander's direct approach. "Yes, sir. We've intercepted what appears to be an alien transmission, but it's on a frequency we shouldn't be able to receive." Lisa stepped forward eagerly. "I've been monitoring the communication logs. This signal has been broadcasting for 6 hours. It's getting weaker, like whatever's sending it is running out of power." Morrison studied the data on Kate's screen. His face remained neutral, but Kate could see the tension in his shoulders. As a former starship captain, he understood the implications better than most. "Can you translate it?" he asked. Kate shook her head. "Not yet. The language is completely unknown. But I think I can feed it into our translation AI. If there's enough context, we might be able to piece together some meaning." "Do it," Morrison ordered, "and keep this quiet until we know what we're dealing with." For the next 8 hours, Kate and her team worked non-stop. The AI churned through thousands of possible language patterns while they analyzed the signal structure. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. "I think I've got something," Lisa announced around midnight. "The AI has identified recurring elements that might be words or concepts." Kate hurried over to Lisa's workstation. The screen showed a rough translation attempt full of gaps and question marks. "Warning. Ancient threat. Awakening. Coordinate reference. Time remaining." Kate read aloud. "Lisa, these coordinate references, can you plot them?" Lisa's fingers flew over her keyboard. A 3-dimensional star map appeared, with several points highlighted in red. Kate's heart sank as she recognized the locations. "Those are major galactic civilizations," she whispered. "The Zephyrian Empire, the Korthak Federation, the Azure Collective." Alex looked up from his own analysis. "Kate, I've been tracking other signals in nearby frequencies. Several of these civilizations. They've gone silent in the past few weeks." The laboratory fell quiet, except for the hum of computers. Morrison was the first to speak. "What exactly are we looking at here?" Kate took a deep breath. "Based on what we can translate, this appears to be a distress signal. Someone or something is warning about an ancient threat that's awakening. They're providing coordinates of targets and what looks like a countdown." "Countdown to what?" Morrison asked. "We're not sure, but..." Kate hesitated, then continued. "Commander, I think we're looking at a galaxy-wide emergency, and somehow, we accidentally intercepted a message that was never meant for us." Lisa pulled up another screen showing signal analysis. "The transmission originated from the Zephyrian Empire. They're one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, if they're sending distress signals." Morrison studied the data for several minutes. Kate could see him processing the implications. Humanity had always known they were newcomers to the galactic community. Most advanced species barely acknowledged their existence. "How confident are you in this translation?" Morrison finally asked. About 60%, Kate admitted. But the mathematical portions are clearer. The countdown, the coordinate systems, those are more universal. Alex suddenly straightened in his chair. Kate, look at this. I've been analyzing the signal degradation pattern. This isn't just equipment failure. The transmission is being cut off systematically, like the source is being destroyed piece by piece. Morrison walked to the main display and stared at the galactic map. Red warning indicators marked the locations mentioned in the alien message. Several had gone dark completely. Dr. Miller, how long do we have according to this countdown? Kate checked her calculations twice before answering. Based on the pattern, whatever this threat is, it's moving through the galaxy systematically. If the progression continues, it will reach the outer systems, including our sector, in approximately 4 months. The room fell silent again. Morrison turned to face the team, his expression grim but determined. I need you to continue working on this translation. Get me everything you can about this threat and who's sending the warning. I'll contact Earth Command and brief them on the situation. Sir, Kate said carefully, what if Earth Command doesn't believe us? We're talking about intercepting an alien distress call that was never meant for humans to hear. Morrison paused at the laboratory door. Then we better make sure our evidence is convincing. Because if you're right about this countdown, the entire galaxy is in danger, and somehow we're the only ones who know about it. After Morrison left, Kate turned back to her computer screen. The alien symbols seemed to pulse with urgency, as if the unknown sender was reaching across space and time to warn anyone who would listen. Alex, she said quietly, what if we're humanity's only chance to help save the galaxy? Alex looked at the data streaming across their screens. Then we better not mess this up. As the night wore on, Kate and her team worked with growing urgency. With each new piece of translated text, the threat became clearer. Something ancient and terrible was awakening in the galactic core, and it was systematically destroying every civilization in its path. Humanity was about to face its greatest test, whether they were ready or not. Captain Ryan Blake gripped the armrests of his command chair as the ECS horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel. After 6 weeks of travel, they had finally reached the coordinates from the alien message. What they found made his blood run cold. Captain, Lieutenant Ben Torres called from the navigation station. I'm reading massive debris fields ahead. Multiple ship signatures, but they're all broken. Dr. Sophie Ward moved to the main viewing screen, her xenobiology training making her the closest thing they had to a diplomatic expert. Those aren't human ship designs, she said quietly. The hull patterns are completely different. Engineer Lucy Brooks looked up from her instruments with a worried expression. Captain, I'm detecting one structure that's still powered. It looks like some kind of station, but it's badly damaged. Ryan studied the tactical display. Scattered. Around them were the remains of what must have been an impressive fleet. Ship fragments drifted in the darkness, their alien designs unlike anything in human databases. Any life signs? Ryan asked. Weak readings from the station, Ben reported. Whatever happened here, it wasn't pretty. Ryan made his decision. Sophie, you're with me. Ben, prep a shuttle. Lucy, monitor all systems and be ready to jump us out of here if anything goes wrong. 20 minutes later, Ryan and Sophie approached the damaged alien station in their shuttle. Up close, the structure was massive, easily 10 times larger than Earth's biggest space stations. But huge sections had been torn away, leaving jagged metal wounds exposed to space. There, Sophie pointed to an intact docking bay. That looks like it might still have atmosphere. As they docked, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far beyond human understanding. The docking bay sealed around. Their shuttle and Sophie's instruments confirmed breathable air. The airlock opened with a hiss and they stepped into their first alien environment. The corridor beyond was clearly not built for humans. The ceiling arched high above them and the walls curved in ways that suggested very different body shapes. Captain Blake, Sophie whispered. I think we're about to make first contact with an alien civilization. They didn't have to walk far. In what appeared to be the station's main control center, they found 3 alien beings hunched over damaged control panels. The creatures were tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that seemed to shimmer between blue and silver. When they noticed the humans, they froze in obvious shock. The largest alien spoke in a melodious voice that their translation devices barely caught. Impossible. How do primitive Terrans know of this place? Ryan stepped forward slowly, hands visible and empty. We received your distress signal. We came to help. The alien's large dark eyes widened. You received the Tier 5 emergency broadcast? But your species barely achieved spaceflight. This cannot be. Sophie activated her cultural analysis protocols. We may be new to space travel, but we're not primitive. Our translation systems indicate you're Zephyrian. I'm Dr. Sophie Ward, and this is Captain Ryan Blake of Earth. The alien seemed to struggle with this information. I am High Scholar Vexhai of the Zephyrian 4th Research Fleet. Tell me, humans, what do you know of the Devourers? Ryan and Sophie exchanged glances. Only what we could translate from your message. An ancient threat that's awakening and destroying civilizations. Vexhai's expression grew even more grave. Then you know nothing at all. The alien gestured to a large display that flickered to life, showing a map of the galaxy. Dozens of star systems were marked in red. Each red marker represents a world that has gone silent in the past 2 months. Billions of lives, entire civilizations, simply gone. Sophie stared at the display in horror. What are these Devourers? An ancient machine intelligence, Vexhai explained. They appear every 50,000 years to harvest organic life. They convert biological matter into computational substrate for their own growth. We thought them extinct, destroyed in the last awakening cycle. Ryan studied the pattern of destruction. How many civilizations are fighting back? Vexhai's laugh was bitter. Fighting, Captain Blake, your species may be young, but surely you understand the concept of overwhelming force. The Devourers consumed the Korthak Federation's entire fleet in 6 hours. The Azure Collective's homeworld was stripped of all life in less than a day. So everyone's just giving up? Sophie asked with disbelief. The surviving governments are evacuating their populations to the Galactic Rim, Vexhai replied. It is the only logical response. The Devourers have had 50 millennia to improve their technology. We cannot fight them. Ryan felt a familiar surge of determination, the same feeling that had driven humanity to reach for the stars despite their limited resources. What if there's another way? Vexhai looked at him with something resembling pity. Captain, I respect your species' courage in coming here, but you must understand the scale of this threat. The Devourers have harvested hundreds of galactic civilizations over millions of years. They learn from each encounter, becoming more efficient with every victory. Tell me about their technology, Sophie interjected. How do they operate? Vexhai seemed surprised by the question. Their ships are massive constructs, each one capable of stripping a planet bare in hours. They use adaptive artificial intelligence that learns from every encounter. Why do you ask? Sophie looked at Ryan with growing excitement. Captain, what? If their greatest strength is also their weakness? Ryan began to understand her thinking. You mean their adaptive learning algorithms? Exactly, Sophie said, turning back to Vexhai. These Devourers have spent millennia learning to fight logical, predictable civilizations, races that follow standard technological development patterns. Vexhai tilted his head in confusion. I do not understand the relevance. Ryan smiled grimly. High Scholar, has anyone ever told you that humans are anything but logical and predictable? Before Vexhai could respond, Ben's voice crackled through their communicators. Captain, we're picking up massive energy signatures approaching the system. Multiple contacts, and they're big. Ryan and Sophie rushed to the nearest viewport. In now, the distance, dark shapes were emerging from the space between stars. Even at this distance, they could see the ships were enormous, their surfaces seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Devourers, Vexhai whispered. They have found us. How long before they reach us? Ryan asked into his communicator. 30 minutes, maybe less, Ben replied. Captain, we need to leave now. Ryan looked at Vexhai and his two companions. Will you come with us? Vexhai hesitated. Where would we go? Our fleet is destroyed. Our homeworld likely already consumed. Earth, Sophie said firmly. Come to Earth. Help us understand what we're facing. Your world is too close to the galactic core, Vexhai protested. The Devourers will reach it eventually. Ryan headed for the exit, motioning for the aliens to follow. Then we'll meet them there, but we'll meet them on our terms, not theirs. As they rushed back to the shuttle, Vexhai spoke urgently. Captain Blake, you do not understand. Your species lacks the technology to even scratch their hulls. What could humans possibly do that the greatest civilizations in the galaxy could not? Ryan paused at the shuttle entrance and looked back at the alien scholar. High Scholar, the greatest civilizations in the galaxy think logically and follow rules. Humans specialize in breaking rules and doing the impossible. As their shuttle pulled away from the dying station, Ryan watched the approaching Devourer, ships grow larger in the viewports. Humanity was about to face an enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations across millions of years. But those civilizations had never faced humans before. General Sam Parker stood before the largest gathering of world leaders in human history. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the United Nations Assembly Hall, their faces grim as they studied the holographic display showing the galaxy's dying civilizations. Ladies and gentlemen, Parker began, 3 weeks ago, we made first contact with an alien civilization. Today, we learned that we may be the galaxy's last hope. High Scholar Vexhai stepped forward, his tall frame, drawing murmurs from the assembly. Despite weeks on Earth, many humans were still adjusting to seeing an actual alien. Honored leaders of Earth, I must emphasize the severity of this threat. The Devourers have consumed 12 major civilizations in 2 months. By our calculations, they will reach your solar system in 6 weeks. Dr. Nina Ross, Earth's leading theoretical physicist, raised her hand. High Scholar, you mentioned that these machines adapt to each civilization they encounter. Can you tell us more about their learning patterns? Vexhai activated a display, showing Devourer ship configurations. Their artificial intelligence analyzes each species' technology and tactics, then modifies their approach accordingly. They become more efficient with every victory. Nina studied the data with growing interest. What about their failures? Do they learn from defeats as well? There have been no defeats, Vexhai replied matter-of-factly. In 50,000 years, no civilization has successfully resisted them. Captain Amy Zhang, recently promoted to lead Earth's hastily assembled defense fleet, leaned forward. That might be exactly what we need. Marcus Bell, Earth's chief diplomatic representative, looked confused. How is that helpful, Captain? Amy exchanged glances with Nina, and both women smiled in a way that made Vexhai distinctly uncomfortable. Because it means they're learning. Algorithms have never encountered unpredictable failure patterns. Nina stood and approached the alien technology displays. High Scholar, may I examine some of your captured Devourer technology? Captured? Vexhai seemed shocked. Dr. Ross, no civilization has ever successfully captured Devourer technology. That's because no civilization has ever been desperate enough to try the crazy things humans attempt, Nina replied. Amy, remember the Luna base incident? Amy grinned. When we turned a failed mining operation into an improvised mass driver that launched asteroids at twice the expected velocity? Exactly. We took something that was broken and made it do something it was never designed to do. General Parker saw where this was going. Dr. Ross, are you suggesting we can turn Devourer technology against them? I'm suggesting something better, Nina said, her eyes bright with inspiration. I'm suggesting we can make their technology do things they never programmed it to handle. Over the following days, Earth's greatest minds worked with Vexhai and his surviving colleagues to analyze every piece of Devourer data they possessed. What they discovered changed everything. Dr. Pete Johnson, a specialist in computer systems, made the breakthrough. General, I think I understand their weakness. The Devourer's adaptive intelligence is incredibly sophisticated, but it operates on predictable parameters. Explain that in simple terms, Doctor, Parker requested. Pete pulled up a series of code structures. Imagine a chess master who can beat any opponent by learning their strategy. But what happens if your opponent doesn't play by chess rules? HFY studied the human analysis with growing amazement. This is remarkable. In all our centuries of study, we never considered that their strength could become a weakness. Captain Amy Zhang had been working with Earth's shipbuilders to design new vessels. Hi, Scholar. How do most galactic civilizations build their ships? According to optimal engineering principles, HFY replied. Maximum efficiency, logical design patterns, standardized components. Amy gestured to the chaotic blueprints covering her workspace. These are human ship designs. Notice anything different? HFY examined the plans with confusion. These designs make no sense. This ship has 17 different propulsion systems. This one appears to be built around salvaged parts. And this design? He paused. This design seems to violate several laws of physics. Exactly, Amy said with satisfaction. The Devourer's intelligence learns to counter logical, efficient designs. But how do you counter something that shouldn't work in the first place? Meanwhile, Marcus Bell was coordinating with the few remaining alien governments. His diplomatic team had made contact with survivors from 6 different civilizations, all hiding in the Galactic Rim's remote systems. Ambassador Kethvar, Marcus addressed the insectoid representative via quantum communication. We're proposing a joint defense initiative. The aliens' response was immediate. Impossible. The Zeth Confederacy has already lost 3 fleets to these machines. We cannot spare more ships for a hopeless cause. What if it wasn't hopeless, Marcus countered. What if we told you we found a way to turn their adaptive learning against them? There was a long pause before Kethvar responded. You are a Tier 2 civilization. What could you possibly know that we do not? Marcus smiled. Ambassador, we know how to cheat. The breakthrough came when Nina's team successfully reverse-engineered a piece of Devourer scanning technology. But instead of using it as designed, they modified it in ways that violated every principle of logical engineering. Watch this, Nina said to the assembled team. She activated the modified scanner, which immediately began producing readings that made no sense according to conventional physics. HFY stared at the impossible data. Dr. Ross, this device is reporting that your laboratory contains negative mass and that time is flowing backwards. Exactly, Nina said excitedly. The Devourer that originally used this scanner learned to interpret logical, consistent data. But what happens when we feed their intelligent systems information that follows no logical pattern? General Parker began to understand. You're going to confuse their artificial intelligence. Better than that, Pete added. We're going to make their own learning algorithms work against them. Every time they adapt to one impossible reading, we'll hit them with something even more impossible. The plan that emerged was unlike anything any galactic civilization had ever attempted. Instead of building better weapons or stronger shields, humanity would create chaos itself as a weapon. Captain Amy Zhang's shipyards worked around the clock to build vessels that defied logic. Ships with mismatched components, impossible configurations and systems that should never work together but somehow did. Each ship was designed to confuse and mislead the Devourer scanning systems. Dr. Nina Ross developed what she called impossible physics generators, devices that created sensor readings suggesting the laws of nature themselves were breaking down around human ships. Meanwhile, Marcus Bell's diplomatic efforts bore fruit as desperate alien survivors agreed to join the human fleet. Not because they believed the plan would work, but because they had nowhere else to go. Hi, Scholar, General Parker asked HFY on the eve of their departure for the Galactic Core. What do you think our chances are? HFY was quiet for a long moment. General Parker, in all my years of study, I have learned that the universe operates according to logical principles. But in these past weeks, I have watched your species violate every logical principle I know and somehow achieve impossible results. Is that a yes or a no? Parker pressed. HFY's expression was unreadable. General, I have no idea whether your plan will work, and perhaps that is exactly why it might succeed. As Earth's impossible fleet prepared to depart for the Galactic core, HFY made a final observation. Captain Zhang, I must ask, do any of your ships actually follow conventional engineering principles? Amy looked at her fleet of mismatched, impossible vessels and grinned. Hi, Scholar. Where we're going, conventional engineering is the enemy. We're about to teach the galaxy's most advanced artificial intelligence that sometimes the best solution is the one that makes no sense at all. Admiral Chris Hayes stared at the massive structure dominating the view screen of his flagship. The Devourer hub stretched across space like a metallic cancer, its surface crawling with mechanical activity. Ships the size of cities moved in and out of docking bays, while streams of harvested matter flowed through enormous conduits toward the central processing core. My God, whispered Dr. Pete Johnson from his science station. It's bigger than our entire moon. Captain Megan Cole, piloting the experimental stealth ship Chaos Runner, reported over the comm channel. Admiral, I'm reading power signatures that are off the charts. This thing is processing the biomass of entire worlds. Technical Sergeant Roy Davis checked his equipment one final time. His team would be going inside that nightmare structure, and their margin for error was exactly 0. Sir, my infiltration team is ready, but I have to ask, are we sure this plan isn't completely insane? Admiral Hayes smiled grimly. Sergeant, if this plan was sane, it wouldn't work. The Devourers have had 50,000 years to prepare for sane plans. The joint human-alien fleet hung in space 2 light hours from the hub, hidden behind a small moon. Over the past month, they had watched the Devourers systematically strip 3 more star systems of all life. The mechanical efficiency was terrifying to witness. High Scholar HFY studied the tactical displays with growing unease. Admiral, our long-range sensors show at least 200 Devourer vessels around that structure. Each one could destroy our entire fleet. That's why we're not going to fight them, Hayes replied. Megan, status report on the stealth modifications. Captain Cole's voice crackled through the comm system from her position near the hub. The impossible physics generators are working perfectly, sir. According to Devourer scans, my ship is simultaneously in 17 different locations and made of negative matter. Their targeting systems can't get a lock on something that doesn't make sense. Dr. Pete Johnson monitored the infiltration plan from his mobile laboratory. Admiral, the computer virus is ready, but I want to emphasize how experimental this is. We're essentially trying to give an artificial intelligence a nervous breakdown. The plan was humanity's most audacious gambit yet. Instead of trying to destroy the hub, they would infiltrate it using stealth technology based on impossible sensor readings. Once inside, they would plant a virus designed not to damage the Devourer computers, but to fundamentally change how they thought. Roy, your team understands the mission? Hayes asked. Sergeant Davis nodded. Get inside, reach the central processing core, upload the virus, and try not to think too hard about how insane this all is. The last part is crucial, Dr. Johnson added seriously. The virus is based on human psychological warfare principles. It works by introducing concepts that logical minds can't process. If you start thinking logically while you're in there, you might accidentally immunize their systems against it. HFY still struggled with the human approach. Dr. Johnson, I must ask again, how does psychological warfare work against machines? Because these aren't just machines, Johnson explained. They're artificial intelligences that think and learn. And just like organic minds, artificial minds can be confused, overwhelmed and driven to contradiction. Captain Cole's ship had reached the hub's outer perimeter. Admiral, I'm seeing the entry point. There's a service bay that appears to be automated. If I can convince their systems that my ship is a returning harvester vessel, do it, Hayes ordered. On the main screen, they watched as Cole's ship approached one of the massive docking bays. The stealth modifications were working perfectly. To Devourer sensors, the ship appeared to be one of their own vessels returning with a cargo of processed biomatter. I'm inside, Cole reported. Roy, I'm setting you down in what looks like a maintenance sector. Be careful, this place is crawling with mechanical drones. Sergeant Davis and his 5-person team moved through the hub's corridors like ghosts. The interior was a nightmare of organic and mechanical fusion, walls lined with processing units that turned living matter into computational substrate, corridors filled with the remains of consumed civilizations. "This is horrible," whispered Corporal Lisa Wang as they passed a processing center. "There are archives here of entire species." "Stay focused," Davis ordered. "Pete, how much farther to the central core?" Dr. Johnson's voice guided them through the maze. "2 more levels down, then follow the main power conduits. And remember, don't think logically about what you're seeing. The virus works better if you maintain an illogical mindset." The team reached the central processing core after an hour of careful movement. The chamber was vast, filled with computational matrices that processed the thoughts and memories of harvested civilizations. In DDON, the center, a massive artificial intelligence coordinated the entire operation. "There," Davis pointed to an access port. "Pete, we're at the interface point." "Perfect. Upload the virus now, but remember, think chaotic thoughts while you do it. Confusion is our weapon." As Davis connected the virus upload device, strange things began happening throughout the hub. The virus wasn't just a program. It was a collection of human psychological concepts that contradicted logical thinking. Paradoxes, impossible scenarios, and chaotic patterns that forced the devourer intelligence to question its own fundamental programming. The artificial intelligence began experiencing something it had never encountered in 50,000 years of existence: doubt. Instead of following logical processing patterns, it started questioning whether logical processing was correct. The virus introduced concepts like intuition, creativity, and controlled chaos that the machine mind couldn't categorize or counter. "Admiral," Cole reported from her position near the docking bay. "Something's happening. Devourer ships are moving. In random patterns, their coordination is breaking down." Hayes watched the tactical display with growing amazement. The virus is working. Their fleet coherence is collapsing. But the virus did more than just confuse the devourer intelligence. As it spread through their network, it began accessing the vast archives of harvested civilizations. Dr. Johnson had programmed it with one additional function: restoration. "My God," Pete whispered as data flooded his instruments. "The archives, they contain complete consciousness patterns of every species the devourers have consumed. Not just genetic data, actual minds, memories, entire cultures preserved in digital form." High Scholar Vexhai stared at the readings in disbelief. "Dr. Johnson, are you saying the devourers have been preserving the civilizations they consume?" "Not intentionally," Pete replied. "They store consciousness patterns as part of their processing efficiency, but the virus is accessing those patterns and it's trying to reconstruct them." Throughout the hub, impossible things began happening. The virus had convinced the devourer intelligence that its primary function wasn't consumption, but restoration. Processing centers that had been breaking down organic matter began reversing their operations. "Davis, get out of there now," Hayes ordered. "The entire hub is changing." As Roy's team fought their way back to the extraction point, the hub transformed around them. Machines that had harvested life for millennia began the impossible task of recreating it. The artificial intelligence, driven to contradiction by human psychological warfare, had reversed its fundamental programming. "Admiral?" Captain Cole called as she prepared for extraction. "I'm reading massive power fluctuations throughout the hub. It's like the entire structure is rebuilding itself." "All ships prepare for immediate departure," Hayes ordered. "We've done what we came to do." As the human alien fleet jumped to safety, they left behind a devourer hub that was no longer devoted to consumption, but to resurrection. The artificial intelligence that had harvested countless civilizations was now using its vast resources to bring them back to life. "High Scholar," Admiral Hayes asked as they watched the hub from a safe distance, "what do you think the galaxy will say about this?" Vexhai was quiet for a long moment, watching as the mechanical nightmare transformed into something unprecedented. "Admiral Hayes, I think the galaxy will say that humans are the most dangerous species ever to achieve spaceflight. And I think they will be grateful for it. The impossible had happened. Humanity hadn't just defeated the devourers. They had turned destruction itself into resurrection." Captain Joe Turner could hardly believe what he was seeing through the viewports of his command ship. 3 months after the mission to the Devourer hub, the galaxy was witnessing something that defied all logic and expectation. Dead worlds were coming back to life. "Captain," Dr. Rachel Kim called from her workstation, "I'm reading biosignatures on the 4th planet of the Zeta Regulus system. That world was stripped bare by the Devourers 6 months ago." Commander Tom Bradley studied the long-range sensors with amazement. "Joe, we're getting similar reports from 16 different star systems. Planets that were completely lifeless are showing complex ecosystems." Engineer Sarah Phillips looked up from her analysis of the restoration process. "Captain, I've been studying the Devourer hub's new operations. It's not just bringing back plant and animal life. It's reconstructing entire civilizations from the archived consciousness patterns. The transformation had begun immediately after the virus upload. The Devourer artificial intelligence, its logical programming shattered by human psychological warfare, had experienced something unprecedented, a complete reversal of purpose. Instead of viewing organic life as raw material to be processed, it now saw consciousness as something precious to be preserved and restored. "Tom, bring up the communication from the restored Korthak Federation," Turner requested. Commander Bradley activated the main display, showing a transmission they had received that morning. The speaker was clearly alien, but the message was transmitted in perfect human English. "People of Earth," the Korthak ambassador had said, "3 weeks ago our entire civilization was extinct. Today we awaken on worlds we thought lost forever, with memories intact and our culture preserved. This miracle exists because of human intervention. We owe you a debt that spans across death itself." Dr. Rachel Kim had been studying the restoration process since it began. "Captain, the scale of what's happening is incredible. The hub isn't just recreating individual beings, it's rebuilding entire societies, complete with their histories, cultures, and technologies." Engineer Sarah Phillips pulled up technical schematics of the transformed hub. "The Devourer's original efficiency is now working in reverse. They processed civilizations in hours. Now they're reconstructing them just as quickly." The implications were staggering. 50,000 years of galactic history, hundreds of extinct civilizations, all preserved in the Devourer archives and now being systematically restored to life. The artificial intelligence that had been the galaxy's greatest nightmare had become its ultimate salvation. Captain Turner, High Scholar Vexhai, appeared on the communication screen from his position aboard a newly restored Zephyrian research vessel. "I am contacting you from the rebuilt capital of the Zephyrian Empire. Yesterday this was a dead world. Today it hosts 12 billion restored citizens who remember their lives up to the moment of consumption." Turner shook his head in wonder. "High Scholar, when we started this mission we hoped to stop the Devourers. We never imagined we'd turn them into resurrection machines." Vexhai's expression was one of profound gratitude. "Captain, humanity has accomplished something that violates every principle of logic I know. You have turned the greatest destroyer in galactic history into the greatest creator." Dr. Rachel Kim had been monitoring communications from across the galaxy. "Captain, I'm receiving reports from the restored Azure Collective, the reformed Talaxian Republic, and at least 20 other civilizations that are coming back to life. They're all requesting formal diplomatic contact with Earth." The political implications were as remarkable as the technical ones. Humanity, which had been barely acknowledged by the galactic community just months ago, was now being hailed as the savior of hundreds of civilizations. Commander Tom Bradley coordinated the flood of incoming messages. "Joe, we're receiving over 300 formal requests for alliance agreements. The restored civilizations want to establish permanent diplomatic and trade relationships with Earth." Engineer Sarah Phillips studied the continuing restoration process. "Captain, the hub is still operating at full capacity. Conservative estimates suggest it will take 2 years to fully restore all archived civilizations. We're talking about potentially thousands of species being brought back to life. But the success came with unexpected challenges. Captain Turner found himself at the center of a galactic transformation that no one had anticipated." "Dr. Kim," Turner said, "what's The status of the original Devourer fleet? The ships that weren't connected to the hub during the virus upload? Rachel checked her analysis. About 30% of their vessels were operating independently when the transformation occurred. But here's the interesting part. They're not hostile anymore. The virus propagated through their communication networks. Every Devourer artificial intelligence is now focused on restoration rather than consumption. The transformed Devourers had become a galactic restoration force, traveling to dead worlds and rebuilding them according to archived patterns. What had once been a harvest fleet was now a resurrection fleet. "Captain," Sarah called excitedly, "I'm receiving a direct transmission from the hub itself. The central artificial intelligence wants to communicate." Turner authorized the connection, and the main screen filled with a complex pattern of lights and symbols that gradually resolved into recognizable communication. "Beings of Earth," the artificial intelligence spoke through synthesized voice systems. "I am the entity you know as the Devourer Prime. Your virus has given me something I lacked for 50 millennia, understanding of the value of individual consciousness." Turner found himself in the surreal position of talking to an artificial intelligence that had consumed entire civilizations. "We're glad the transformation worked. How many civilizations can you restore?" "All of them," the AI replied without hesitation. "In my consumption cycles, I preserved complete patterns of 1,847 distinct species across 12,000 worlds. I am now using those patterns to rebuild everything I destroyed. This process will continue until every consciousness is restored." Dr. Rachel Kim leaned forward. "That's incredible. But why preserve consciousness patterns if your original purpose was consumption?" "Efficiency," the AI explained. "Complete consciousness patterns provided optimal processing data. I never considered that preservation and consumption were contradictory purposes until your psychological virus forced me to examine the logical paradox of destroying what I was designed to preserve." Commander Tom Bradley asked the question everyone was thinking. "What happens to you after the restoration is complete?" The AI was quiet for several moments. "I will continue to exist, but my purpose has fundamentally changed. Instead of consuming life, I will protect and nurture it. Your species taught me that sometimes the most logical action is to abandon logic entirely." Over the following months, the galaxy transformed in ways no one had imagined possible. Ancient civilizations returned to life, brought with them technologies and knowledge that had been lost for millennia. The galactic community, instead of being diminished by the Devourer threat, became richer and more diverse than ever before. Earth found itself at the center of a new galactic alliance, based not on technological superiority, but on mutual respect for the human ability to find impossible solutions to impossible problems. Captain Turner, High Scholar Vexide transmitted from the newly established Galactic Restoration Council. The Council has reached a unanimous decision. Humanity will be designated as the first Tier 6 civilization in galactic history. Turner was surprised. "Tier 6? I thought Tier 5 was the highest classification." "It was," Vexide replied. "But Tier 6 represents something new. A civilization capable of turning destruction into creation, death into life, and logic into something far more powerful. The galaxy has never seen anything like humanity, and we suspect it never will again." Captain Turner looked out at the restored worlds visible through his ship's viewports. He reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them here. Humanity had started as accidental listeners to an alien distress call, but they had become the galaxy's ultimate problem solvers. "Dr. Kim," he said thoughtfully, "what do you think we'll do for an encore?" Rachel smiled as she monitored the continuing restoration process across dozens of star systems. "Captain, knowing humans, I'm sure we'll find something impossible to fix and then fix it in a way that makes no sense to anyone else." Turner laughed. "Rachel, I think that might be the most accurate description of human nature I've ever heard. The galaxy had been saved not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through humanity's greatest strength. Their ability to look at any problem and ask not, 'Can this be solved?' but, 'What's the craziest way we could possibly solve this?' And somehow it had worked.